The crimson sands of Caris X stretched endlessly beneath twin suns that burned mercilessly in a sky the color of bruised flesh. Elias watched from the narrow slit of his holding cell as the massive arena gates began to part with a hydraulic hiss. The roar of 80,000 spectators thundered through the underground passages, echoing off stone and metal until it became a physical force that vibrated in his chest. 7 years. 7 years since he'd stepped foot on this hellscape of a planet. And now he was back, not as a mercenary, but as gladiatorial entertainment for the Imperial conglomerate. 2 minutes. Fighter. The guard's voice was emotionless as the cell door slid open. Weapons are prepped. Don't disappoint the crowd today. Elias ran calloused fingers through his short-cropped hair, now streaked with premature gray. At 35, he was older than most arena fighters, but experience had kept him alive through 12 matches. A respectable record, considering most newcomers didn't survive their first. The holding area smelled of sweat, fear, and antiseptic, the latter applied liberally to the arena floor after each match to sanitize the bloodshed for the next spectacle. Imperial entertainment demanded cleanliness, even in slaughter. "Any word on my opponent?" Elias asked, already knowing the answer. The guard's face remained impassive. "You'll see soon enough." As Elias stepped into the tunnel leading to the arena, the weight of his past pressed down upon his shoulders. The last time he'd been on Caris X, he'd been part of a security detail for an Imperial mining operation. That's when he'd found her, a child, barely 8 years old, hiding in the ruins of a village his employers had relocated to access valuable xenorium deposits. He'd smuggled her aboard their transport, arranging passage to a refugee colony. He should have done more, should have ensured she reached safety. Instead, he'd handed her off to another crew and collected his payment. The memory was a wound that never healed. The tunnel brightened as he approached the arena entrance. His hand instinctively reached for the weapon belt strapped across his chest. The Empire banned projectile weapons in the arena. Too quick, not enough spectacle, but allowed an array of bladed and energy weapons that prolonged the entertainment value of each match. Elias selected his preferred weapon, a plasma sword with a curved hilt that had become his signature in the arena. The blade hummed to life with a blue-white glow as he stepped through the final gate. The Caris Prime Arena was a marvel of Imperial engineering, a massive oval basin with 60-foot walls of polished black stone. Strategic force fields protected the wealthy spectators from any potential danger while allowing them unobstructed views of the violence below. The arena floor was covered in the red sand native to Caris X, stained darker in places from matches past. A voice boomed across the arena, amplified to godlike proportions. "Citizens of the Imperial conglomerate, honored guests and dignitaries, welcome to today's premier match." Elias squared his shoulders, focusing on the gate opposite his position. His opponent would emerge from there, and they would circle each other before the killing began. Arena Master Vorax loved to build the tension. In the East Gate, a fighter who has proven his worth through steel and blood, 12 victories, formerly of Earth's elite mercenary corps. I give you, Elias the Survivor. The crowd's response was tepid. Elias was established enough to have followers, but lacked the flamboyance that made arena favorites. He didn't play to the crowd, or mutilate his opponents for show. "And in the West Gate," continued Vorax, his voice dropping to a dramatic whisper that somehow penetrated every corner of the arena. "Our reigning champion with 22 consecutive victories. The shadow that strikes without mercy. The blade that has never known defeat. I give you, Shadowblade." The opposite gate rose, and a figure emerged from the darkness. Tall and lithe, clad in form-fitting black armor, with accents of deep crimson. Twin energy blades extended from gauntlets on each forearm, shorter than Elias's sword, but deadly in their precision. The fighter's face was obscured by a sleek helmet with a reflective visor. The crowd erupted in deafening approval. Shadowblade was a favorite, merciless, elegant, and mysterious. The champion raised both blades in acknowledgement, turning slowly to accept the adoration from all sides. Elias tightened his grip on his weapon. Shadowblade's technique was legendary, a blur of movement and precision strikes. He'd watched recordings of previous matches, studying for weaknesses. There were few. The fighters approached the center circle, as tradition demanded, stopping 10 paces apart. Arena rules required combatants to face each other before the signal to begin. "Fighters," announced Vorax. "You know the rules. Victory by surrender or death. Imperial honor to the victor." A bell tone resonated throughout the arena. The match had begun. Shadowblade moved with liquid grace, circling right, while maintaining perfect balance. Elias mirrored the movement, keeping his sword in a middle guard position. He needed to be patient, to observe. The first attack came without warning, a flash of red energy as Shadowblade closed the distance with impossible speed. Elias barely parried the strike to his midsection, the plasma blades sizzling as they connected. He countered with a broad sweep, forcing his opponent back. They separated, and for the first time, Elias caught a glimpse of eyes behind the visor, deep amber with flecks of gold. Something about them struck a chord of recognition. Shadowblade attacked again, this time with a complex series of strikes, high, low, feint, thrust, a pattern designed to overwhelm. Elias defended by giving ground, using his longer reach to keep distance between them. "You're hesitant today, survivor," came a voice from behind the helmet, digitally altered, but with unmistakable contempt. "Has your courage finally abandoned you?" Elias didn't respond to the taunt. Conversation was a distraction, and he needed all his focus to. The next sequence caught him off guard. Shadowblade dropped low, sweeping a leg toward his ankles while simultaneously striking high with the right blade. Elias jumped the leg sweep, but took a glancing blow to his shoulder, the plasma burning through his armor and searing the flesh beneath. Pain lanced down his arm, but he converted the momentum into a rolling recovery, coming up 6 paces away. The crowd roared its approval at first blood. "Do you remember Vani Fu, Elias?" The question froze him mid-stance. Vani Fu, the mining colony, the village. His hesitation cost him, as Shadowblade pressed the advantage, driving forward with a flurry of strikes that forced Elias to retreat toward the arena wall. A blade slipped through his defense, leaving a burning line across his ribs. "What do you know of Vani?" he managed between labored breaths, parrying another strike. "I know you were there when they slaughtered my people." The voice held cold fury. "I know you found a child hiding in the ruins." Elias's blood ran cold. It couldn't be. Taking advantage of his shock, Shadowblade executed a spinning kick that connected with his chest, sending him sprawling onto the red sand. His sword skittered away, deactivating as it left his grip. Shadowblade stood over him, one blade extended toward his throat. With the free hand, the champion reached up and removed the helmet. Long black hair fell free around a face that was both familiar and strange. The child's features now matured into a woman's, but with the same determined set to the jaw, the same amber eyes that had once looked up at him with trust and hope. "Jalira," he whispered. The crowd fell silent, sensing the unexpected drama unfolding before them. Arena Master Vorax leaned forward in his observation booth, suddenly alert. "You remember my name." Her voice, no longer filtered through the helmet, carried a musical quality despite its hardness. "I wondered if you would." Elias made no move toward his weapon. "I thought you reached the refugee colony." The transport was intercepted by conglomerate forces. Her blade didn't waver from his throat. "They separated the adults from the children, sent us to different processing centers, the adults to labor camps, the children to training facilities." Understanding dawned on Elias. The Empire's gladiator program, taking orphans and refugees and molding them into arena fighters. The most successful became celebrities, living symbols of imperial might and mercy. The failures became cautionary examples. Jalira, Save your excuses. She pressed the blade closer, the energy field singeing the skin of his neck. You left me, handed me off like cargo and collected your payment. I tried to ensure your safety, Elias said, the words sounding hollow even to his own ears. I paid extra for secure passage. Not enough, apparently. Her eyes narrowed. Get up. Retrieve your weapon. What? The match isn't over, and I won't kill you unarmed. It lacks entertainment value. The last two words dripped with disdain. Elias slowly got to his feet, retrieving his sword. The plasma blade hummed to life once more. The crowd, sensing the tension, began to murmur in anticipation. I'm sorry, Jalira. He meant it with every fiber of his being. I failed you. Yes, she agreed, resuming her fighting stance. You did. They circled each other once more. But the dynamic had changed. Elias was fighting not just for survival now, but weighted down by guilt. Jalira attacked with renewed fury. Each strike aimed to wound rather than kill, prolonging the match, extending his suffering. He defended without counterattacking, taking glancing blows that left burning trails across his arms and legs. The crowd began to boo his passive performance. Fight back, Jalira hissed during a momentary blade lock. Or have you surrendered your life already? I won't fight you, Jalira. Her face contorted in rage. Then you'll die a coward! She launched a blistering attack sequence that drove him back toward the arena wall once more. This time, however, he sidestepped at the last moment, grabbing a handful of the red sand and throwing it toward her visor. It wasn't a killing move, but it provided the distraction he needed. While she cleared her vision, Elias slashed at the ground, his plasma blade superheating the sand into a momentary cloud of glass particles and smoke. Using the cover, he circled behind her. When the air cleared, they stood 5 paces apart, weapons raised. A slow clapping echoed across the arena. Arena Master Vorax's amplified voice returned. What an unexpected development! Personal history between our fighters adds such delicious tension. His voice oozed with theatrical delight. But I'm afraid we must pause today's entertainment. Elias and Jalira both looked toward the Master's booth in surprise. This revelation deserves special treatment, Vorax continued. The survivor and the child he saved, now mortal enemies. We shall resume this vendetta match in 3 days' time, as our main event. And to ensure maximum motivation, the next encounter will be to the death. No surrenders accepted. The crowd erupted in cheers and shouts. Vorax had masterfully built anticipation for an even greater spectacle. Guards emerged from gates around the perimeter, signaling the end of the match. As they approached to escort the fighters back to their respective cells, Jalira leaned close to Elias. This isn't over, she whispered, her voice containing something beyond hatred, a note Elias couldn't quite identify. It doesn't have to end with either of us dying, he responded quietly. Her amber eyes studied him for a moment. 3 days, Elias. Then we finish what began on Vanifor. As the guards led them to opposite exits, Elias glanced back to see Jalira already walking away, her posture rigid with unresolved rage. Whatever bond they might have shared had been severed years ago. Now all that remained was her hatred and his guilt, a volatile combination that would culminate in blood 3 days hence. Unless he could find another way. The cell door slid shut behind Elias with a metallic clang that echoed the finality of his situation. 3 days until he faced Jalira again. 3 days to find a solution that didn't end with one of them dead. He stripped off his damaged armor, wincing as the fabric pulled away from plasma burns. The medical droid would arrive soon to treat his wounds. The Empire needed its fighters in peak condition for maximum entertainment value. But for now, The pain helped him focus. Rough match. The voice came from the adjacent cell. Corin, a Catherian fighter who had survived the arena for nearly 6 years. His feline features appeared at the small communication grate between their cells. That was Shadowblade, wasn't it? You're lucky to be alive. Elias sat heavily on his bunk. It's worse than you think. She's someone from my past. Corin's eyes widened with interest. The child mentioned in the arena? Tell me. Over the next hour, as the medical droid treated his wounds, Elias recounted the story of Vani 4, the mining operation, finding Jalira, his attempt to secure her passage to safety. With each word, the weight of his failure pressed down harder. You couldn't have known the transport would be intercepted, Corin offered. I should have taken her myself. Made sure she reached safety. Elias winced as the droid applied regenerative gel to a particularly deep burn. Instead, I went back to my unit, collected my pay. Corin was silent for a moment. She's been Shadowblade all this time. No wonder she fights with such fury. You've seen her matches? Everyone has. 22 victories. Most of them executions rather than battles. She's efficient, ruthless. Corin's expression grew serious. And now you're scheduled for a death match against her. Elias closed his eyes. I need information, Corin. Everything you know about her fighting style, her routines, her connections in this place. Planning to win after all? Planning to survive. There has to be another way out of this. Corin's laugh was bitter. There's only one way out of Karis Prime, my friend, and it isn't through the front gates. Maybe not. Elias leaned closer to the grate. What if there were a way to escape? Would you take it? The Catherian's eyes narrowed. That kind of talk gets people sent to the isolation chambers. Or worse. Just answer the question. Of course I would. Corin glanced nervously at the corridor. But it's impossible. The arena complex is a fortress. Guards, surveillance, automated security systems. No one escapes Karis Prime. Someone might, with inside help? Understanding dawned on Corin's face. You think Shadowblade, Jalira, would help you? I don't know, but I need to find out. How? Fighters from different blocks don't interact outside the arena. Elias smiled grimly. You've been here 6 years. You must have connections. Guards who can be bribed. Service workers who move between areas. Corin was silent for a long moment. There's a maintenance worker, Zeph. Traxian. Young. Idealistic. Secretly sympathetic to fighters. He sometimes passes messages between cells for small favors. Can you get word to him? Possibly. What's the message? Elias considered his words carefully. Tell Jalira I need to speak with her. About our shared past and a possible shared future. Corin nodded slowly. I'll try. But don't expect miracles. Elias, Shadowblade isn't known for mercy. After Corin retreated from the grate, Elias lay back on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. His mind raced with half-formed plans and desperate strategies. If Jalira wouldn't help, he was as good as dead. If she did help, well, the odds were still staggeringly against them. But a slim chance was better than none. Sleep came in fitful bursts, interrupted by dreams of Vania 4 and a small child with amber eyes who kept asking why he had abandoned her. In each dream, he tried to explain, to apologize, but no words would come. And then, the child would transform into Shadowblade. Plasma blades extended, moving in for the kill. He woke to the sound of his cell door opening. The chronometer on the wall showed it was the middle of the night cycle. A guard stood in the doorway, one Elias didn't recognize. On your feet, the guard said quietly. Medical evaluation? Elias knew there was no scheduled examination. This was either an ambush or something else. He rose cautiously. Hands, the guard instructed, producing restraints. Once secured. Elias was led through dimly lit corridors he'd never seen before. They descended 2 levels via a service elevator, then proceeded through a maintenance tunnel. The absence of other guards or surveillance cameras sent a clear message. This was off the record. Finally, they reached a small room filled with cleaning equipment and atmospheric filters. The guard unlocked his restraints. 5 minutes, he said, then stepped outside, closing the door. From the shadows on the far side of the room, a figure emerged. Jalira had exchanged her arena armor for simple prisoner's garb, but she moved with the same lethal grace. Without the helmet, her features seemed younger, the hardness in her eyes less pronounced. "Your message was intriguing," she said, keeping her distance, "especially coming through Corin's channels." "Thank you for agreeing to meet," Elias said. "I'm curious, not agreeable." She leaned against a storage unit. "You mentioned our shared past. There's nothing to discuss. You abandoned me, and now we fight to the death. Simple." "It doesn't have to end that way." "No," her eyebrow arched. "Arena Master Vorax has declared it a death match. One of us dies. Those are the rules." "Rules can be broken." Elias took a cautious step forward. "Or circumvented." "You're talking about escape." It wasn't a question. "Impossible." "With the right plan and the right help, nothing's impossible." Jalira laughed, though there was no humor in it. "You think I haven't considered escape? I've been here 7 years, Elias. I know every weakness of this place, every potential exit. There are none." "Then why are you champion?" he asked. "Why play their game? Why not die fighting years ago?" Something flickered across her face. A moment of vulnerability quickly masked. "Perhaps I enjoy killing in the arena. Perhaps it suits me." "I don't believe that." "You don't know me anymore." Her voice hardened. "The child you saved died a long time ago." "Then why meet with me at all?" She had no immediate answer. In the silence, Elias pressed his advantage. "You're champion because it gives you privileges, access, information. You've been planning something, building towards something." Jalira's eyes narrowed. "You presume much." "Am I wrong?" She studied him for a long moment, calculation evident in her gaze. "What makes you think I'd include you in any hypothetical plans?" "Because I have something you need." "And what's that?" "Allies." Elias gestured toward the door. "Corin has connections throughout the fighter blocks. I have the trust of newer combatants who haven't been broken by the system yet. Together, we could mobilize significant numbers." "For what purpose? A mass suicide run at the gates?" "For whatever purpose serves your plan." Jalira moved with sudden speed, closing the distance between them until they were inches apart. Despite her slighter build, her presence was intimidating. "Why should I trust you?" she demanded. "You failed me once already." Elias met her gaze without flinching. "Because I have nothing left to lose. Because I've carried the guilt of failing you for 7 years. Because if I die in that arena, I want it to mean something." She searched his face, looking for deception. Finding none, she stepped back. 3 days, she said finally. 3 days until our match. Not enough time. "For what?" "For what would be needed." She shook her head. "The next transport shipment is 5 days away. Security rotations change in 4. The timing is wrong. So we adapt, change the timeline." "It's not that simple." "Make it simple," Elias insisted. "What's your plan?" Jalira paced the small room, internal conflict evident in her movements. Finally, she stopped. "I've spent years building my position," she said quietly. "Becoming champion, earning privileges, creating a network, all leading to one opportunity." "Which is?" "The arena's centennial." Her eyes gleamed with purpose. 3 months from now, the Emperor himself will attend, along with half the Imperial Council. Security will be unprecedented, but also predictable, focused on external threats, not internal ones. That's too long to wait, Elias argued. We won't survive 3 months of death matches. We would if we were working together. She gave him a meaningful look. Champions can select fighting partners for exhibition matches, non-lethal demonstrations of skill for special events. Understanding dawned. You could choose me. If you survived long enough to be worthy of the honor, she nodded. But now our match is in 3 days, and Vorax has declared it to the death. The timeline is compressed. Then we accelerate everything. Elias's mind raced with possibilities. We don't wait for the centennial. We use our match as the catalyst. How? You said you've built a network. How extensive is it? Jalira hesitated, then apparently decided to trust him. I have contacts among the maintenance staff, like your Zeph. 2 guards on my rotation. Access to limited sections of the security mainframe through the Champion's Privilege Terminal. Enough to create a distraction? To potentially override certain systems? Potentially, but the response would be immediate and overwhelming. Unless the response is already occupied elsewhere. Elias's eyes lit with inspiration. The death match between the champion and the man who abandoned her as a child. It will draw full attendance. All eyes on the arena. Jalira caught his meaning immediately. A perfect distraction. We fight. We make it look real. Spectacular even. Meanwhile, your contacts implement whatever systems overrides you've been planning. And then? Then we create chaos. Elias smiled grimly. Champions can select fighting partners. Can they select ceremonial guards as well? Yes, 2 for formal events. Corin and Zeph, armed and positioned near you. When the systems go down, we fight our way out. Jalira finished the thought. Through the maintenance tunnels to the lower hangar bays. Is there a ship we could secure? I've had a courier maintained in a state of readiness for over a year. Another privilege of championship. My own transport for promotional events. Fully fueled. Basic navigation systems. Enough to reach the outer territories? If we can clear the orbital defense grid? Her expression showed the first hint of hope Elias had seen. It's still a desperate plan. 1,000 things could go wrong. As opposed to certain death in 3 days? Jalira nodded slowly. We'd need to coordinate with your people, establish signals, timing, rally points. Zeph can act as our go-between. And we'd need weapons cached along the escape route. Can your guard contacts help with that? Possibly. She glanced at the door. Our time is almost up. If we're doing this, there's no room for hesitation or error. I understand. No, you don't. Her expression hardened once more. If you betray me again, Elias, if this is some ploy to gain advantage in our match, I will make your death in that arena last for hours. Do you understand? I won't fail you again, Jalira. I swear it. She studied him for a moment longer, then nodded once. The guard will return you to your cell. Say nothing to anyone except Corin. I'll send instructions through Zeph tomorrow. As if on cue, the door opened, and the guard reappeared with the restraints. As Elias held out his wrists, Jalira spoke one last time. In the arena, we must convince everyone the hatred is real. No holding back. We fight as if we intend to kill each other. I understand. Good, because our lives depend on it. She melted back into the shadows as the guard secured Elias's restraints. 3 days. Elias, make them count. The journey back to his cell was tense. Every shadow potentially hiding a suspicious guard or surveillance drone. But they reached his block without incident. And soon, Elias was back behind the familiar metal door. Corin appeared at the grate almost immediately. Well, what happened? We have a plan, Elias said quietly. A desperate, possibly suicidal plan. Those are the best kind. The Catherian's fangs showed in a grim smile. What do you need from me? For the next hour. Elias outlined what he and Jalira had discussed, filling in gaps with his own ideas where necessary. Corin listened intently, occasionally offering refinements based on his knowledge of the arena complex. "It might work," he said finally, "if everything aligns perfectly, if no one betrays us, if the guard rotations follow their usual patterns." That's a lot of ifs. It's still better odds than facing Shadowblade in a death match. Corin's expression grew serious. "Do you trust her, Elias? After what happened between you?" "I have to." Elias stared at the ceiling of his cell. "And in 3 days, we'll find out if that trust is warranted." The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation and tension. Zeph made 3 visits to their block, ostensibly to repair environmental systems but actually delivering coded messages from Jalira. Each message refined their plan, adding details about guard positions, security protocols, and escape routes. On the eve of the match, Elias lay awake on his bunk, mentally reviewing every aspect of what was to come. The fight would be real. They had to convince Arena Master Vorax and the crowd of their mutual hatred. That meant inflicting actual wounds, taking real risks. Only at a precise moment would they trigger the next phase. If Jalira's contacts succeeded in their tasks, security systems throughout the non-arena sections would go into lockdown, trapping guards away from the fighting floor. Emergency protocols would isolate the spectator sections as well. In the ensuing confusion, they would make their move. If not, then tomorrow would indeed be a fight to the death. Sleep finally claimed him in the early hours, bringing fitful dreams of crimson sand and amber eyes. The day of the match arrived with the artificial dawn of the arena complex. Elias was awakened by guards, regular ones this time, coming to escort him to the preparation chamber. As he passed Corin's cell, the Catherian gave him a subtle nod. He was ready. In the preparation chamber, Elias was provided with new armor, sleeker, more ornate than his usual gear. Death matches were special occasions in Karis Prime, and the Empire ensured its fighters looked spectacular as they died. A medical technician administered stimulants and pain suppressors, standard procedure to ensure fighters performed at peak levels regardless of injury. "A message from Arena Master Vorax," said the head guard as they finished the preparations. "He expects a memorable performance today. The Emperor's cousin is in attendance." Elias merely nodded. The pressure was a familiar weight, but today it carried additional significance. Not only his life, but the lives of everyone involved in their escape attempt hung in the balance. The journey to the arena tunnel felt longer than usual. Each step brought him closer to either freedom or death. When he finally reached the holding area before the gate, a familiar figure was waiting. Zeph, the young Traxian maintenance worker, was adjusting an environmental control panel. As the guards positioned themselves at the tunnel entrance, the worker whispered without looking up from his task. "All preparations are complete. Jalira says the signal will come after the 3rd exchange of blows. Watch for her to switch her right blade to defensive position." Elias gave no indication he'd heard, but Zeph wasn't expecting acknowledgement. The Traxian finished his work and departed, leaving Elias alone with his thoughts and the distant roar of the gathering crowd. Minutes later, the tunnel illuminated as the outer gate began to rise. The familiar voice of Arena Master Vorax boomed through the complex. "Citizens of the Empire, distinguished guests, today we witness the resolution of a blood debt 7 years in the making." The crowd's response was deafening. Elias took a deep breath, centering himself. He selected his plasma sword from the weapons rack, feeling its familiar weight in his hand. From the East Gate, the betrayer who abandoned a child to fate. 12 victories. But today, he faces judgment. Elias the survivor. Elias stepped into the blinding light of the arena. The twin suns of Kairos X blazed overhead, turning the air into a shimmering haze above the crimson sands. The crowd's reaction was mixed, some cheering, others booing. His story had spread through the complex, painting him as either villain or tragic hero, depending on perspective. And from the West Gate, the abandoned child grown into our most lethal champion. 22 victories without defeat. The harbinger of vengeance itself, Shadowblade. The opposite gate rose, and Jalira emerged in her full arena regalia. The black armor gleamed under the harsh sunlight, red accents catching the light like fresh blood. Her helmet was in place, visor reflecting the arena in distorted fragments. She carried her twin plasma blades, already activated and humming with deadly energy. The crowd erupted in unified adoration. Shadowblade was their champion, their perfect killer. Today, she would have her revenge, and they would witness justice served in blood and pain. The fighters approached the center circle, as tradition dictated. When they stood 10 paces apart, Jalira removed her helmet, allowing the crowd to see her face, to witness her hatred of the man who had failed her. The act brought renewed cheers. "Fighters!" Vorax's voice carried artificial gravitas. "This match ends only in death. There will be no surrender, no reprieve. Begin." The signal tone echoed across the arena. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then Jalira attacked with explosive speed, closing the distance with a diagonal slash that would have opened Elias from shoulder to hip had it connected. He parried and countered with a thrust toward her midsection, which she easily avoided. The first exchange was tentative, both fighters gauging each other's speed and reaction time. They separated, circling warily. Elias noted the position of her blades, both still in offensive configuration. Not yet time for the signal. "You should have finished me when you had the chance," he called, loud enough for the audio pickups to transmit to the spectators. "Death comes to all betrayers," she responded, her voice carrying the perfect note of cold fury. "Yours will simply be more instructive." She attacked again, this time with a complex sequence designed to drive him toward the arena wall. Elias countered with a sweeping cut that forced her to break off her advance. As they separated, their blades connected in a shower of energy discharge that momentarily blinded nearby cameras. The second exchange, one more before the signal. Elias pressed the attack this time, using his superior reach to keep her at a distance while driving her toward the eastern section of the arena, closer to their planned exit point. Jalira defended flawlessly, then executed a spinning maneuver that brought her inside his guard. Her left blade scored a burning line across his thigh as she passed. The crowd roared its approval at first blood. Elias stumbled but maintained his footing, turning to face her next assault. Jalira paused, allowing him to recover, a move that might seem like arrogance to the spectators, but was actually calculated timing. Their eyes met across the crimson sand. It was time. Jalira shifted her right blade to a defensive position, angled across her body rather than extended forward. The signal. Elias acknowledged with a subtle nod, then launched a ferocious attack designed to drive her back toward the western wall, away from their actual target. The maneuver would seem logical to observers, a wounded fighter becoming desperate, making a final push. As their blades connected in a sustained lock, Jalira whispered words only he could hear. "Now, be ready." They separated, circling once more, and then chaos erupted. Emergency klaxons blared throughout the complex. Red warning lights flashed around the perimeter of the arena. Vorax's confused voice echoed from the speakers. "Remain calm. We are experiencing a technical—" His voice cut off as the arena's communication system went dead. Simultaneously, the force fields separating the fighting floor from the spectator sections flickered and stabilized at a higher intensity, now preventing not just fighters from leaving, but security from entering. The crowd's excited murmurs turned to confused shouts. In the Imperial box, security personnel surrounded the visiting dignitaries, weapons drawn as they assessed the threat. Elias and Jalira continued their performance, exchanging blows that looked deadly to observers, but were carefully controlled between them. With each exchange, They moved closer to the eastern service entrance, a small gate used to bring equipment onto the arena floor. "Status?" Elias asked during a blade lock. "Proceeding as planned," Jalira responded. "Security lockdown in all non-arena sections. Guard response divided. Service gate releases in 30 seconds." They separated and resumed their deadly dance. The crowd, initially distracted by the alarms, had refocused on the match, assuming the technical issues were unrelated to the spectacle before them. From the corner of his eye, Elias saw movement at the service gate. It slid open just enough for a figure to slip through. Zeph, carrying what appeared to be maintenance equipment but was actually a bundle of weapons. The Traxian moved to a position behind a decorative rock formation, out of sight from most of the arena. "Ready," Jalira said, loud enough for only Elias to hear. "On my mark, disengage and sprint for the east service gate. Zeph has the weapons." "Understood." They exchanged 3 more strikes, moving in a wide arc that brought them within 20 paces of the service entrance. In the stands, Elias noticed security personnel attempting to override the force field controls without success. Arena Master Vorax was gesticulating wildly in his booth, surrounded by technicians. "Now!" Jalira suddenly disengaged and sprinted toward the service gate. Elias followed immediately. The crowd's confusion turned to outrage as they realized the fighters were abandoning the match. Guards stationed around the arena perimeter raised weapons, but the force fields prevented them from intervening. Zeph emerged from his hiding place, tossing weapon belts to both Elias and Jalira as they reached him. The small service gate began to close, an automated response to the security breach. But Zeph had wedged a maintenance tool in the track, preventing it from sealing completely. "This way," he said, slipping through the narrow opening. "Quickly!" Jalira followed, with Elias close behind. As he squeezed through the gap, plasma bolts from guard weapons struck the area around the gate, superheating the metal. Once through, Elias kicked away the wedge, allowing the gate to slam shut behind them. They found themselves in a narrow maintenance tunnel, dimly lit by emergency lighting. Zeph was already moving ahead, leading them toward a junction. "Corin?" Elias asked as they ran. "Already at the rendezvous point," Zeph replied, along with 6 others who chose freedom over the arena. "6?" Elias glanced at Jalira. "Your network is more extensive than you let on." "Need-to-know basis," she said without breaking stride. "If captured, you couldn't reveal what you didn't know." The tunnel opened into a larger corridor. Zeph held up a hand, signaling them to stop, then peered around the corner. "2 guards," he whispered. "Standard armor, shock batons and plasma pistols." Jalira checked the weapon belt Zeph had provided. It contained a compact plasma pistol and several small devices Elias didn't recognize. "Stun grenades," she explained, detaching one. "Non-lethal unless at very close range." "Since when does Shadowblade care about non-lethal?" Elias asked. Her expression hardened. "The guards are doing their job. This isn't their fight." Before he could respond, she activated the grenade and tossed it around the corner. A flash of intense light was followed by the dull thud of bodies hitting the floor. "Clear," she said, moving forward. The unconscious guards were quickly secured with their own restraints. Zeph led them through a series of maintenance passages, occasionally consulting a small device that displayed the complex's layout. Security responses concentrated at the main arena entrances and the administrative level. The Traxian reported, "They haven't identified our route yet." "That will change," Jalira said grimly. "We need to reach the lower hangar before they realize that's our target." They descended through service shafts and emergency stairwells, avoiding the main corridors where possible. Twice they encountered maintenance drones, which Zeph disabled with a specialized tool. Once they were forced to hide in an environmental control room as a squad of guards passed nearby. After what seemed like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes, they reached a heavy security door marked Level 5, Restricted Access. "The hangar is beyond this point," Zeph said, examining the control panel. But my access code won't work here. Jalira stepped forward. Mine might. Champion's privileges extend to all non-military areas. She placed her palm against the scanner. For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then the panel flashed green, and the door slid open with a hydraulic hiss. Beyond lay a cavernous space filled with various vessels, small shuttles, maintenance craft, and personal transports for arena officials. At the far end, near a massive hangar door, a group of figures huddled behind a stack of cargo containers. Corin, Elias breathed in relief. As they approached, the Catherian fighter emerged from cover, accompanied by 5 other arena combatants and a woman in technician's coveralls. You made it, Corin said, clasping Elias's forearm in greeting. We were beginning to worry. Status? Jalira demanded. The courier is prepped and ready, replied the technician, another of Jalira's network. I've bypassed the ignition protocols and loaded the navigation system with coordinates for the jump point. Jump point? Elias looked to Jalira. We can't reach the outer territories directly from Kairos X, she explained. Too much Imperial traffic, too many patrol vessels. We need to make a series of jumps through less monitored space. And our first destination? Haven's Reach, a frontier settlement beyond Imperial jurisdiction. A distant explosion rocked the complex, causing dust to filter down from the hangar ceiling. They're systematically overriding the lockdown protocols, Zeph said, checking his display. We have perhaps 10 minutes before they reach this level. Then we move now. Jalira turned to the assembled group. The courier can carry 12. We have 11. Once we clear the hangar, our main obstacle will be the orbital defense grid. How do we get past that? One of the fighters asked. A young woman with intricate scarification across her face, marking her as Novalian. The grid is programmed to allow authorized departures, the technician explained. I've loaded the courier's transponder with Arena Master Vorax's priority codes. They should grant us clear passage. Should? Corin's ears flattened against his skull. Nothing is certain, Jalira said firmly. We all knew the risks when we chose this path. Another explosion, closer this time, emphasized her point. To the ship, Elias ordered. Now! The courier was a sleek vessel, with the Imperial insignia emblazoned on its hull. A transport designed for speed, rather than combat or cargo. As they approached, the entry ramp extended automatically, responding to Jalira's proximity. The interior was spacious by courier standards. A main cabin with 12 acceleration couches, a small galley, and a cockpit designed for a pilot and navigator. The technician moved immediately to the controls, her fingers dancing across the instrument panels. Systems online, fuel at 93%. Life support optimal. She glanced back at Jalira. We're ready. Seal the ramp and prepare for immediate departure. As the others secured themselves in the acceleration couches, Elias followed Jalira to the cockpit. Through the forward viewport, he could see the massive hangar doors, still closed. Those are going to be a problem, he noted. Not for long. Jalira took the pilot's seat, gesturing for Elias to take the navigator position. The hangar emergency protocols include automatic door release in case of fire or atmospheric contamination. She activated the ship's communication system, connecting to a specific frequency. Zeph, are you in position? The Traxian's voice came through clearly. At the environmental control station, ready on your mark. Execute! Moments later, warning klaxons blared throughout the hangar. Emergency lights flashed as the atmospheric sensors detected a hazardous gas release. Or rather, detected what Zeph had programmed them to detect. The massive hangar doors began to part, revealing the red-tinged sky of Kairos X beyond. Hang on, Jalira said, engaging the courier's engines. The ship hummed to life, rising on its repulsor lifts. This departure won't be subtle. She guided the vessel toward the opening doors, accelerating gradually to avoid drawing immediate attention. Beyond the hangar lay a landing field, then the perimeter of the arena complex, and finally, the desert wasteland that covered most of Kairos X. As they cleared the hangar doors, alarms suddenly blared from the ship's warning systems. "Security protocols activated," the technician called from her station. "They've identified us as unauthorized." "Switching to emergency thrust," Jalira announced, her hands moving across the controls with practiced precision. "Everyone brace for high-G acceleration." The courier lurched forward as its main engines engaged, pushing everyone back into their seats with crushing force. Through the viewport, Elias saw defense turrets on the arena perimeter, swiveling to track their escape. "Incoming fire!" he warned. Deploying countermeasures, Jalira activated a series of small drones that launched from the courier's hull, creating a cloud of decoys and jammers. The first volley of plasma bolts streaked past them, one grazing the ship's port stabilizer. The courier shuddered but maintained its trajectory, rapidly gaining altitude. "Hull integrity at 92%, reported the technician. "Minimal damage." "What about the orbital grid?" Corin called from the main cabin. "We'll know in about 30 seconds, Jalira replied grimly. The courier punched through the upper atmosphere, the sky darkening from red to purple, to the star-filled black of space. Ahead, Elias could see the faint shimmer of the orbital defense grid, a network of automated platforms designed to prevent unauthorized departures from Imperial worlds. "Transmitting Vorax's codes now," Jalira said, activating the transponder sequence. For several tense seconds, nothing happened. The grid maintained its configuration, and the courier continued its approach. Then, just as Elias began to hope, alarm systems blared once more. "Code rejected!" The technician's voice was tight with fear. "They've changed the authorization protocols." "Evasive maneuvers," Jalira announced, banking the courier sharply to port as the nearest defense platform launched a spread of interceptor drones. "We can't outrun those," Elias warned, watching the tactical display as the drones rapidly closed the distance. "We don't need to outrun them," Jalira replied, her focus absolute as she guided the ship through a series of complex maneuvers. "We just need to reach the jump point." The navigation system showed their position relative to the predetermined coordinates, still 30 seconds away at current speed. The interceptors would reach them in 20. "Diverting power from life support and secondary systems to engines," Jalira announced. The lights in the cabin dimmed as energy was redirected. The courier surged forward, pushing them even deeper into their seats. 10 seconds to intercept," Elias reported, watching the tactical display. 15 seconds to jump point." The first interceptor fired, its energy weapon grazing the courier's stern. Warning lights flashed across the control panel. "Hull breach in cargo compartment," the technician shouted. "Sealing bulkheads." 5 seconds to jump point," Jalira said through gritted teeth, her hands steady on the controls, despite the ship's violent shuddering. The jump drive began to power up, creating the distinctive distortion field that would propel them into hyperspace. Outside, space itself seemed to bend around the courier's hull. "Jump in 3, 2, 1. Reality twisted, stretched, and then snapped back as the courier vanished from Kairos X space, leaving the interceptors targeting empty coordinates. The sudden transition from high-G acceleration to the calm of hyperspace left everyone momentarily disoriented. Then, a ragged cheer erupted from the main cabin, the sound of people who had expected to die and suddenly found themselves alive and free. Jalira let out a long breath, her shoulders relaxing fractionally. "First jump successful. We'll remain in hyperspace for 6 hours before dropping out to recalibrate for the second jump." Elias studied her profile, the tension in her jaw, the focus in her amber eyes. "You did it," he said quietly. "You actually did it." "We did it," she corrected, finally turning to meet his gaze. "Though we're not safe yet. The Empire will send pursuit ships once they realize we've escaped. But they'll be hours behind us. By the time they trace our first jump, we'll be on our second or third. Assuming our navigation calculations are correct, assuming the courier systems hold together, assuming a great many things. Despite her words, there was a hint of pride in her voice, perhaps even hope. In the main cabin, the other escapees were beginning to move about, examining their new surroundings, exchanging embraces of relief and triumph. Zeph was attending to minor injuries with a medical kit, while Corin and the technician assessed the damage to the hull. "What happens when we reach Haven's Reach?" Elias asked. "We disappear," Jalira said simply. "New identities, new lives. The outer colonies are filled with people running from something. A few more won't draw attention. And after that?" She glanced at him, something unreadable in her expression. "One step at a time. Elias, we've escaped the arena. That's enough for today." He nodded, understanding her caution. Trust between them was still a fragile thing, newly rebuilt and not yet tested beyond their shared goal of escape. Whatever came next would develop in its own time. "I should check on the others," he said, rising from the navigator's seat. "Make sure everyone's handling the transition all right." Jalira nodded. "I'll remain here. We need to monitor the hyperspace corridor for instabilities." As Elias moved toward the main cabin, she called after him. "Elias!" He turned. "Thank you," she said, the words clearly difficult for her. "For not failing me this time." "I won't fail you again," he promised. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." A ghost of a smile touched her lips, perhaps the first genuine one he'd seen from her. "Together," she agreed. "Now go check on our people. We have a long journey ahead." 3 months later, the settlement of Haven's Reach had incorporated 11 new residents into its population of outcasts, refugees, and frontier opportunists. Located on the forest moon of a gas giant beyond imperial jurisdiction, the colony existed in the border space between civilized systems and true wilderness. Elias stood on the porch of the small dwelling he'd constructed at the settlement's edge, watching the gas giant rise over the eastern tree line. Its swirling colors painted the twilight sky in shades of amber and gold that reminded him of Jalira's eyes. The sound of approaching footsteps drew his attention. Jalira emerged from the path that led to the colony's center, her movements still carrying the grace of a fighter, but lacking the lethal tension she'd maintained in the arena. She wore simple frontier clothing now, with only a small blade at her hip, a practical tool rather than a weapon of war. "The council meeting went well," she reported, joining him on the porch. "They've approved our proposal for the training program." Since their arrival, they had gradually revealed their skills to the settlement leaders, offering to establish a defensive training regimen for the colonists. Pirates and corporate mercenaries occasionally raided frontier settlements, and Haven's Reach had suffered losses in the past. "Corin will be pleased," Elias noted. "He's been eager to put his experience to constructive use. As have we all." Jalira leaned against the porch railing, her gaze tracking the rising giant. "Zeph sends word from the communications hub. No Imperial signals have been detected in this sector for over a month." "Does that mean they've given up the search?" "More likely they've prioritized other matters. The Empire has many enemies, many fires to extinguish. Eventually, 2 escaped gladiators and their companions become a footnote in security reports." "2 very expensive gladiators," Elias reminded her with a faint smile. Shadowblade alone was worth millions in betting revenues. "Former Shadowblade," she corrected. "That person no longer exists." They stood in comfortable silence for a time, watching the sky darken and stars emerge. In the 3 months since their escape, they had gradually established a rhythm of cooperation and mutual respect. Trust had come more slowly, but it had come. "I visited the memorial garden today," Jalira said eventually. Elias nodded. The small garden had been her idea, a place to honor those left behind in the arena. Names carved in stone for fighters they had known, empty spaces for those whose names they never learned. A place of remembrance and acknowledgement. The Novalian flowers are beginning to bloom, she continued. Sarah says they remind her of her homeworld. I'm glad. The young Novalian fighter had been the quietest of their group, haunted by years in the arena. Recently, she had begun to emerge from her shell, taking an interest in the settlement's agricultural projects. She deserves some connection to her past that isn't stained with blood, with... Don't we all? Jalira's voice carried no bitterness now, only a reflective quality. Another comfortable silence stretched between them. In the distance, lights began to appear in the settlement as evening fell. Do you still dream of it? Elias asked eventually. The arena. Sometimes, she turned to face him. Less often now. What about you? The dreams have changed, he admitted. Before, I dreamed of Vani 4, of finding you, of failing you. Now I dream of the escape, of freedom. Jalira studied him for a moment, then extended her hand. When he took it, her grip was firm, but no longer that of an opponent, or even a comrade in arms. Something had shifted between them, gradually, almost imperceptibly. We should join the others, she said. Corin is organizing some kind of celebration for the training program approval. Lead the way. As they walked the path toward the settlement center, Elias reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From a mining colony on Vani de Ford, to the blood-soaked sands of Karis Prime, to this peaceful forest moon. 7 years of separation and pain, leading somehow to a second chance. What are you thinking? Jalira asked, noticing his introspection. That the universe has strange ways of bringing people together. She considered this, then nodded. And stranger ways of granting redemption. Is that what we found here? Redemption? Perhaps. Her expression softened in the fading light. Or perhaps just a beginning. A beginning, Elias repeated, the words feeling right. I can work with that. Ahead, the lights of Haven's Reach beckoned. Not the harsh glare of arena floodlights or the cold illumination of prison cells, but the warm glow of homes and gathering places. A community of the broken and displaced who had somehow found each other and created something new. Together, he asked, echoing their words aboard the courier 3 months earlier. Jalira's hand found his again, her fingers intertwining with his own. Together, she agreed. And side by side, they walked toward the light.